Alright class, in this video we're going to talk about what happens when we have to divide, when we have two numbers or two terms that have the same base. So, I already filled in the spot for you here. To divide powers having the same base, you want to subtract the exponents. So if you look here, the numerator has the power of m, and the denominator has a power of n, but they both have the same base, so what you're going to do is subtract. Remember, this rule we talked about how that's just saying that you cannot have 0 in the denominator. So let's look at some practice problems and then I'll explain why it happens the way it does. So the first one, there's actually a couple ways that I can do this. I'm going to show you one way. What I can do is I can use what I know from the previous lesson, is that when I have numbers that have the same base and I'm multiplying the two numbers, I'm going to add the exponents. So I'm going to show you here. X is the base for both the numerator, x to the 4th power times x to the 5th power. So really I'll be adding 4 and 5 over x to the 7th. Now, 4 plus 5 is going to give us 9. That's just the rule that we learned before. And I'm going to make this a 9. This new rule that we have here says if you have numbers that are sitting in the numerator and the denominator and they have the same base, what you're just going to do is take those numbers and subtract. So basically they have the same base of x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you over here what I'm going to do. X to the 9th power, that 9 is coming from the numerator, minus 7. So 9 minus 7 is 2. So really, this is x to the 2nd power. Okay, and you're probably wondering, okay, why? How does this actually work? Well, let me show you the long version. What I'm going to do at the top here is I'm going to expand both of these terms right here. Alright, so basically I expanded this problem here, and you can see the two different groups where they're coming from. Well, if you have a number at the top or the same letter on the numerator and the denominator, you can basically cross them off, because if you do x divided by x, you get 1. So if I cancel this, I have to cancel that one. So what I'm showing you is the leftover is going to be my answer. So cancel all the numerators to the denominators, I will get x times x, which is really x squared, which I got. So that's where the rule is coming from. Okay, so let's look at the next example here. I don't have anything going on at the top here. So really what's going on here is on the bottom. What I'm going to do is distribute this -3 to the x and to the y. That's a rule we talked about in the previous video. If you have any questions, please look at that. But I'm going to show you what that next step is going to look like. Alright, and here you go. I've distributed this -3 to the x and to the y, just split them up. And so now there are two things you can do. You can go ahead and move these exponents up to the top and to the bottom so that you can have a positive exponents, or you can use the quotient property, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you what happens when you subtract the numerator and the denominator exponents, and then get the final answer. So I'm going to highlight here. So these two numbers, I'm going to be looking at their exponents and subtracting. I'm going to be looking at these two and subtracting their exponents. Z is the only one that stands alone. So here we go. I had x to the 5th and x to the -3rd. What I'm going to do here is just show my work for each of them. So I'll have x to the 5th power minus -3. So that same rule applies here. And then for the next one, what I'm going to do is I'll have y as my base. Then I'll have 2. I'll use a different color. So I'll have 2. These will be red here. So 2 minus -3, and the z to the 0 power to the 8th power is just standing there. Okay. So now all we have to do is simplify The new exponent for x, if you have two negative numbers, you're going to add them. So this is x to the 8th power. And then y, and these two are the same thing, will be to the 5th power, and z to the 8th. So that is your final answer. If you took the other way, you would have still gotten the same answers. So if I would have pushed this part of my problem up here, this would become a positive 3. 5 plus 3 is 8, same answer. If I brought this negative 3 up, 2 plus 3 is 5, you still would have gotten the same answer. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys just one more example just so that you can get a little bit more practice with this. Alright, and here's one last example that I just kind of came up with. You can write it down somewhere in your notes, or you can just watch me solve this problem. I have 2 to the negative 1 power times x to the negative 3rd times y to the 4th all over 3x squared times y to the 1st power. Alright, so I'm going to highlight some things that I've noticed. I have a negative exponent here, and a negative exponent here. Actually, just the first one I'm going to show you. If I have a negative 2 to the negative 1 power, I actually technically have to move that down, which I will after I've simplified all my other numbers. But keep that in mind that this number that I've highlighted has to go down with 3. So, if you want to take a chance and solve this on your own, you can. You can pause this video and then you can see the steps that I did. Alright, so I have 2 to the negative 1. It's going to come later into play. I'll have x to the negative 3. What I'm doing is I'm subtracting that by 2. All I'm doing is subtracting these two exponents. Okay. Now, I'm going to now do y. I have y to the 4th minus 1. This is where it's coming from. And then what I'm going to do is put that all over 3, because that's going to come later. So I'll write 2 to the negative 1, because that's the last step I want to do. My new exponent for x is going to be negative 5, and y is going to be 3, all over 3. Okay? Now, just so you know, we have these exponents, and we've already simplified them. So there's the last step that we need to do, and it's to move those two bases down to the denominator with the 3. So what it's going to look like is, I'm going to go down here, y to the 3rd is the only number that is going to be staying up in the numerator. Okay, so we'll just do this so you can see the difference. Y to the 3rd is already in the numerator. 2 to the negative 1 is really going to go to the bottom here with the 3. And now the x to the 5 power is going to meet them both. If I were to simplify this even more, I have y to the 3rd power over 6x to the 5th power. And that's my final answer. Okay? So always remember, you can never have an exponent sitting around, either move them to the numerator or move them to the denominator, depending on what direction where they're sitting at currently. Alright, so if you have any questions, please let me know and do the you-tries on your own and ask me questions. Alright, class. Hopefully this video has answered your questions. If not, please ask me in person. Okay, bye.